have Masaba Gupta coming in with a very candid conversation on the pursuit of happiness. Masaba Gupta is the founder of the House of Masaba, recently known for a very hit Netflix series, Masaba Masaba. She has started her own fashion label called the House of Masaba in 2009. She is revered globally as the queen of prints and has also won a spot in the Forbes 30 under 30 list in the year 2017. Now, this session is going to be moderated by Ms. Abha Bakaya. Ms. Bakaya is a business journalist, news anchor, editor, writer, and producer. She has worked for major news networks like NDTV Profit, ET Now, and Bloomberg TV India. She's turned entrepreneur by setting up her own company, AB Network. Over to you, Abha.
Thank you so much. Great to be here as always. Ascend Foundation, the conclave, always so much value to be taken from these conversations. And Archana always does such a great job of putting it together. So Archana, Mr. Mariwala, thanks so much. Masaba, super excited to have you for this conversation on the pursuit of happiness. We've been watching Masaba, of course, seeing insights into your story, but it's particularly, insightful to hear from you today.
Thank you.
So we have so much, to talk to you about. I think to begin with, everyone would really want to know how you've perhaps managed during this time in terms of building resilience, in terms of coming out on top, navigating it, both as a businesswoman as well as an individual.
Whenever someone asks me this question, I keep telling them that I feel like this pandemic I've had different phases through the lockdown, and since the beginning up until now, I've become different people through those phases, and I don't think I've stayed the same. And I think I can say that for a lot of people, that we'll all come out slightly changed, hopefully for the better. But I think the first 3 months, as I say, I was in a coma. I think it's that entrepreneur coma, as they say. I don't know if they say that, but I have started to use this word where, when crisis hits for the first few weeks, months, moments, you're just in this state of, you're just frozen because you don't really know how to navigate through it. And I think that's what happened also because this was such a new thing for the whole world. And we were actually bang in the middle of a fundraise, and this happened, and it was quite the shocker for me. So for the first 3 months, I just froze. Now, when I say I froze, I as a professional, I didn't feel like I could make decisions properly. I felt like I had a tough time overcoming emotions and just getting down to, getting the job done, because I had 150 plus employees, and I had to make sure that they were taken care of. At the same time, I had to make sure I was taken care of in order to take care of them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened. And then slowly we emerged from that coma, and I think I came back to life. And I just decided, what, no matter how you're feeling, you have to get up and show up. And
Right.
I think that has been my big takeaway, both both from a personal point of view as well as a professional point of view. No matter how you're feeling, you have to just show up. And luckily, even through that frozen period of my life, I kept showing up. I just made sure I was at my desk, at least talking to people, exchanging notes, getting advice, thinking of what the future will be like. All of that, it was all happening. I just didn't make a move, And I think that's who I've become in this period. I'm just listening to people. I think this is a great time to absorb. This is a great time to go inwards and just listen to yourself, listen to what people are saying about your business, about your brand, because that's extremely important. I think we get drowned in our own noise too much sometimes, so we forget to listen. So yeah, that's been my takeaway. And I tell you this, that apart from the fact that it has been a big financial hit, a big emotional hit for a lot of people, this is a great, I call it the thawing period. This is a period where everyone is just going to be broken open and emerge better.
No, that's amazing. And I think it's always important to be optimistic and look ahead and look at what you can gain from this. It's interesting because you've so honestly described your experience. And I feel that's important because many people did take a big hit. And the buzzword resilience was going around so much. And, for those that were sinking more than swimming, it must have felt like an impossible task to build what's called resilience. I think it's important to understand that it's something that all of us go through. There have also been startups who've actually found the quiet or a space in this time to innovate, to think of new ideas, or to find new avenues for growth. Would you say that, as a brand, you also perhaps spend some time looking into those areas and just options or new lines or things that you could possibly do once things get going again?
I absolutely did. I think what happened was that I almost had an out of body experience. And when I say out of body experience, I think, like I said, sometimes you're on a treadmill. I think as a business owner, you're always on a treadmill. You may have hours that you work, but your mind is always sort of churning.
Yeah.
And what happened was that I actually stepped outside of myself, both Masaba, the person, the businesswoman, I stepped outside of myself and I looked at this business and said, okay, one, what is wrong here? I believe, and I really strongly believe, I'm not somebody who comes from a business background, but I believe that a robust business is one which can survive nearly anything. And by survive, I mean not always do well, but just survive. It can ride through a storm. And when I looked at it, I said, there are obviously many problem areas. Being in fashion, I think it's just it's a game of consistency. I don't think it ever stops. And I think you have to constantly keep stepping outside of it to view it as an entrepreneur, as an independent woman, as somebody who is trying to be a creative person, but also look at numbers. You have to keep viewing it. And I think that's exactly what happened in this time. We actually realized that we needed to do less, and everyone said, are you going to do a loungewear line because everyone's at home? Are you going to do a workout line because everyone's now suddenly into fitness? Yeah. I said, I am not going to do anything. I will make what I have stronger to ride out times like these. That was my aim. And I said, I'm on survival mode. I'm in a mode where I have decided that I will not let this ship sink and I will just do less, because I think a lot of our problems came from just doing so much. We did 4 collections a year. It was taking a toll on my design team. It took a toll on me. It took a toll on production. It took a toll on the business, on our stores. And then we realized, hey, we just need to do 2 really great things a year and do less. So I think that was my takeaway: to do less, to do better work in that less, and just to make sure we keep stepping out. So what I said was, on the 5th of every month, I will step outside of my avatar as a businesswoman and as an individual, and I will view this as an outsider. Sure. And that really helped.
So building a brand is particularly critical in a business like yours, and one that you've done so successfully. Talk to us about the kind of process one goes through, or the things to keep in mind while building a brand. Storytelling has become so important today as a part of that, and and I think that's an ongoing process, and also keeping the brand relevant as things evolve. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
So, Abha, the thing is that I've always believed that fashion has its own way of making people feel a bit intimidated at all times, and I believe that, and everyone tells me, you should be aspirational and luxury. And I said, what, I want to just talk to a consumer who is taking the local train. And I also want to talk to a consumer who is sitting in a plush 5-bedroom on Pedder Road. I want to talk to everybody. And I think that's where storytelling comes in. The biggest and best part of storytelling is that you can help that consumer who feels so alienated from fashion become a part of you. The beauty of storytelling is that they should feel like they can touch, feel, and experience your brand, that it's not just a pipe dream, it's something that can come true, it's something that can become a part of their lives in any small shape or form. So I think that was something that I've always done, from having real women. And when I say real women, I mean women of all shapes and sizes, all ethnicities, all skin colors, be a part of our campaigns. That helped our business tremendously, because people just said, hey, that girl looks like me, and I can now probably buy a House of Masaba dress because I just don't see a particular type of woman in it. At the same time, I think what happened was that when you start talking to your consumer in an honest way, and I say honest because today the consumer is very smart. The consumer is not fooled easily. They have many options. And if you're going to lie to them, they will move to the next option. So loyalty obviously is the thing that we need to talk about, where there's so many options today that loyalty doesn't really come into the picture that much. And I think for me, being a young brand, it's changed, but I tell my stories to the youth, and then the youth sort of tugs at her mom's dupatta and says, you know what, mom, I really want a piece of Masaba. So can you take me to the store?
Yeah,
And the mom becomes my consumer. So I think storytelling is great to find a chain of
true.
a consumer. Yeah.
No, that's great. It's interesting. Since we're on that, and I want to also ask you this because so many women are going online today. Not just women, but many women that I know and trying to build their businesses online and find new ways of engaging with customers. You are, of course, very active as a brand yourself, and also as Masaba, the clothing line on social platforms. You've also had the show, which must have been, must have catapulted things to new heights. Tell me how some of this has worked out, what actually led you to do the show in the first place, and how things have changed after its success.
Before that, Abha, I just want to highlight that I was one of those people who said e-commerce in fashion in India will never be 100% of a go-to. It will always be a mix of, offline and online, purely because I believe that Indian families consider shopping as an event.
Right.
Right. So you go with, if you're buying a wedding lehenga or even something that's for an occasion, you will take your mother and your masi and your nani and get five people's opinion and then zero in on it, which is why shopping is an event. It's a very emotionally driven event, which is why I thought, the minute fashion goes online 100%, people might feel a bit, oh, I'm not really buying into this. But I think this pandemic has helped cure that. And we're grateful to it because brick and mortar is, I wouldn't say a dying format, but one that's slowly just going out of breath.
Sure.
And we need to have a sustainable model like e-commerce. So that has been great. Coming to Masaba,
Yeah.
that was, I have no idea where that came from. I mean, my producer of the show, she had been a friend for many years and an acquaintance rather. And she said, I have this great idea because I love your Instagram. And how would you like a series called Masaba and you play yourself? So for a second, I said, is this a reality show? Because believe it or not, I'm a private person and I really enjoy.
I know that. Yeah.
You might know that. So I'm like, a camera following me around isn't my idea of fun. And she said, no, it's scripted. It's a scripted show. It's going to be you and your mom playing yourself. Everybody else is borrowed from your real life, but are actors that have been cast for the part. So I said, you know what, let's give it a shot. And unfortunately or fortunately, I'm a person who's bored easily. So it was a great challenge for me being in front of the camera. And I said, let's give this a shot. It's a new format for India and it will be great for the brand. And my gut just said that this will really help us in big ways. And it did. It saved us from being a business that was very, very close to disaster, I would say. And I'm being very honest about it. But come July 2020, very close to disaster. And August 2020 is when the show came out. And here we are.
Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Should I ask about the funding or should I not? You said you were in the
Ask about the what?
the funding. You said you were in the middle of the funding. It got paused.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's paused. So there's not much I have to say.
You never know.
But you never know. But like I said, you have to keep trying. Like I said, I show up, I do my job. The rest is, there are a lot of things come into play with these things.
Yeah,
So,
and now things might have changed strategically as well, right? With all the developments post the show, the kind of demand
Yeah.
is online, so on and so forth. How do you balance creativity with the business side, Masaba? You seem to do it so beautifully. One sees that in your clothes as well. There's power, there's passion, there's a bit of playfulness.
It's funny, but it was 2013 and I had been in fashion for maybe 3 or 4 years and I was still working out of my house. I didn't really have much of an office. And someone told me, Masaba, your clothes are really cool and they're fun and they're edgy. They're very artistic. And I said, but I don't want to be just artistic. I want to be artistically commercial. And there the word was coined. And I said, artistically commercial, damn, no designer might have thought of that. Because I said, the idea that I'm not somebody who's, I'm an artist and I should only be available in certain spaces and that I'm exclusive. I want my work to be seen and felt and loved by as many people as I can, which is why I say commercial. Having said that, bridging that gap wasn't easy because sometimes you need to do things to feed your creative soul. And sometimes they need to, commerce needs to also keep churning on the side. So it was very difficult for me. I think it took me 5 or 6 years to understand how to bridge that gap. So I find my ways. I do a lot of collaborations. I think that's a great way to keep yourself a little stimulated as a creative person. Where I say, you know what, there is stuff that I do for that is bread and butter for the
Yeah.
business, and there is stuff that I do to feed myself in order to feed that bread and butter. That's very important. That bread and butter won't come if I'm not having my bread and jam on the side. So I think it's very important as a creative person to do that. And I think it's a bit frustrating at times, but you have to put your head down and say, what am I here for? Am I here to fulfill both of these or just one? What do I enjoy doing? I think with creative people, it also sometimes boils down to what do I really love doing? What is my passion? But you also need commerce to sustain passion. Sometimes, so I do both. I do a lot of collaborations with various in different categories. I do watches sometimes. I designed a packet of Kurkure chips 15 days back, which was great fun. I designed a Tata Nano car many years back, and I do these little projects to just keep the fuel burning, as they say.
Nice. That's exciting. So, everyone wants to learn from stories like yours, Masaba. And, even in the early days when you were first starting out, I mean, you're seeing a fresh set of challenges today, but what about when you were first building your business at that time? What are some of the fundamental, challenges that you think new entrepreneurs must be facing while trying to scale their business? Anything that you think could possibly help them in that journey?
Like I said, to begin with, it's very important to get a bird's eye view of the business. It's also very important to constantly keep talking to people. I think what happens is we just get so bogged down and tangled up between the emotions and the bias that we have towards our own businesses that we forget to think practically at times. I think scale is something that I am currently bang in the middle of discovering myself, because fashion is all about that. You're either scaling up or you're a boutique brand. We're somewhere in the middle. And I think that is a conversation I have nearly every day with various people. I'm always talking to people and understanding how and where I stand and what I need to do. So I think that's very important. The second thing I would say is delegate. A lot of the time, people make the mistake of just wanting to micromanage and do everything themselves. I am somebody who loves to just make sure my work is divided into in people's hands and things like that. Third, especially with fashion and I would say with creative businesses, is that it's very important to keep getting young, fresh blood. So we have a lot of interns coming in. We have a lot of just new talent pumping in all the time, because everybody can get into a rut. We have people working with us for 7, 8, 10 years, but as great as they are and the experience that they have is great, but you need that fresh sort of burst of energy to keep you relevant and to keep you young, to see what's happening in the outside world. And I would say, don't be delusional. Delusion, and this is where resilience comes in. And I keep saying that sometimes resilience gets very, it gets mixed up with delusion. You can keep saying
really
that
important. That's really important.
Sometimes, and this has happened with me personally, where I feel like I'm saying, no, I'm going to keep doing this. I will overcome. But sometimes you cannot overcome. Sometimes the idea you have will not work. Sometimes the idea you have is not sustainable. So you have to be able to monitor when your resilience is becoming, you're being deluded by the resilience that you have. So I think that's extremely important. And the last thing I would say is make mistakes, but make inexpensive ones as much as you can. I mean, money is such an important thing. Be conservative, count every penny before you spend it. Make sure you spend wisely, and make sure that if you don't understand finances very deeply, I'm somebody who didn't for a long time, make sure you have a right tight-knit group of people who help you understand that as well, and always save up for a rainy day. So that's, I think, 5 or 6 points I gave.
Okay. Those are really important. They're very crucial, I think, for entrepreneurs to understand those. And I think what you said is absolutely right. I think until sometimes you don't go through it, you don't understand the impact of these lessons,
Yeah.
So now there's been a lot of desire to hear you speak on authenticity, because that's something that people love you for, and something that really came through tangibly even in the show. And I think, I think while it's very natural, how do you feel people can lend themselves to that process of self-discovery, certain experiences that you feel have made you who you are today?
So I've been in fashion 11 years is how long I've had the brand. I think the one thing that has really shaped me is just not being taken seriously consistently. I think when you walk into a room, sometimes when you walk into a room full of people with suits on, especially, sometimes you become that notorious fashion person who unfortunately is not very financially sound or doesn't really have a business acumen. I think that happens a lot today, of course, because we've had so many years added to the label. We have we've got something to prove ourselves in even a small way. I think that's obviously lesser. So that's something that's shaped me, that always know what you're walking into.
Yeah.
That's one. Second is, once you've walked into something, I think it's very important to leave emotion aside. It's very important to push your state of mind aside and get the job done. So I think a lot of people waste a lot of time taking offense, especially in an important meeting.
Yeah.
So it's important to just say, you know what, cut that cord and make it very, very clinical if that's how you feel. And I think this is something a lot of creative people might identify with. And I think the other things that have shaped me are that, there's always a silver lining.
Sure.
As cliche as that sounds, I think there's always a way out. And, when I say go back to the drawing board, I mean, sometimes it also means just pausing everything, putting a hard stop to everything and saying, what are we really here for? Which is what I said earlier as well. And I think just recouping, understanding who your core team is, getting someone to, ask you hard questions. I think that's very important. So I think these are few things that have made me, but I would say that the most important has been just not being taken seriously, because unfortunately, a lot of creative people are not very articulate. They know what they want, but they probably cannot express it. This is something that I have faced in my early meetings when I was trying to raise money. And I found that I went into this whole sort of dramatic situation in my house before I went for a meeting, where I didn't know how to articulate myself because I wanted to come across as smart. And I think the one thing I will say is that always remember that intelligence has many definitions. What is intelligent to you, what is your intelligent, will always be different from somebody else's intelligence. And it's important to understand and identify that.
That's again quite interesting. I think sometimes we don't see that other people are going through some of these thoughts, when you're in a room. And I think what you said at the end about recognizing some of those layers is really important. I think a lot of people are also getting so buried under the weight of trying to come across as perfect and knowledgeable and
please people.
Yes. And I think that it's a great responsibility perhaps on some of the others who have that influence to somehow communicate that.
Absolutely. And it's a skill that you can learn. I think to be articulate is something that you can learn, and I think it's always easier to do once you're not trying to please someone.
Sure.
It's about communicating what's in your head without trying to wonder, is the person across from me going to enjoy listening to this, or is he going to be engaged in this conversation? So
yeah, absolutely. Talk to us also about your lifestyle in terms of do you make an attempt to have a holistic lifestyle? Are you sort of look towards well-being and other kind of measures in nutrition and exercise and all those other things that people are especially doing during the lockdown?
I have a bad reputation, my mother says, to be, because I'm in fashion, to be this party girl. But she said the minute people find out that you sleep at 10 p.m., they will be shocked. But I'm actually very different from what I'm perceived to be. I'm not very social. I am crazy about fitness. I am somebody who I think that fitness is not just important for the body, but also important for the mind. In fact, it has saved me in this lockdown because it became my go-to thing when I just, didn't know what to do with myself. So I think that's very important. I eat by 6:30 p.m. So I'm a bit late, but I eat at 6:30 p.m. and I'm in bed at 9:30 and out by 10, up at 6:37. I do my workouts and my yoga, and I'm at my, now dining table, desk at about 10 o'clock in the morning. And that is my life, has been for many years now. And that's just, I feel like, I anyway have to do so much and put on a show in the life that I lead outside. The one inside should be my safe haven. So, yeah. And big believer that I think, nutrition, fitness, all of these things have a lot to do with your state of mind.
Yeah.
Actually. And it's very easy to catch on to a habit and say, maybe this is, it feels good for now. Maybe it's helping me. It's not so bad. But I think it's important to have discipline in your personal life so that it trickles down into your professional life.
Understood. We're going to ask you a few fun questions as we wind up. So, What does success mean for Masaba?
I think a perfect blend, or I would say a perfect cocktail of doing what I love and being able to put food on my table by doing what I love.
What gets you up in the morning?
I think just the fact that I don't want to disappoint myself. I just don't want to quit. I want to do something new. I just have so many ideas. My head's always buzzing. So I just think I don't want to disappoint myself and not do them. And I always feel like I'm running out of time, which is quite a bad habit. But I keep saying, no, there's no time and I have to complete this. So I think that. Yeah.
Okay. What is your mantra to be happy?
Trust your intelligence. And at the same time, I would say step back sometimes. It's okay to step back. Yeah.
One place you would travel to once COVID is done and dusted, outside of Goa, because everyone's in Goa right now.
Well, I was in the Maldives, like everyone else as well, unfortunately. But I was in the Maldives very recently for Diwali, so I'm good for now. I'll stay put in Bombay.
Okay, I want to ask you to share with us, one anecdote or experience from filming the show, anything that comes to mind, something from behind the scenes that you can leave us with today.
Well, there was this really hilarious moment where I was really stressed out that I'd be acting with my mom. And I was like, oh God, she's gonna really like grill me and whatever. And I think the first scene that I had to do ever on day one was this scene where I was eating and I had to look a little irritated and I had no dialogues and she was across from me. And I started and I was, being my goofy self. And she just said, "You're doing such a bad job." And it was really funny because there was a set of like 100 people. And she said, just don't do such a bad job. Just be yourself and relax and you'll be fine. And that really helped me because you know how it is, right? When you're on set, you're like, I am going to act and I'm going to show people I can act. She said, no, just be yourself and relax. And the good thing is she said it in front of everyone. So it was cool. Like the energy, the ice was broken and everyone had a good laugh. And so that was great. That set the tone for the show.
Right, right. And you had a really fun cast and crew, it seemed.
Such good fun. Tough shoots, but good fun.
So season 2 is coming up.
Fingers crossed. But yeah, well, I'm sure everyone would love season 2, but fingers crossed. Yeah.
Amazing. Masaba, such a pleasure always. Thank you. And I really appreciate that you put some time and thought into putting those messages across to those entrepreneurs listening today. I think it was really valuable. So thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure completely.